So let me share my screen. So this is a very special discussion on possible questions and how do you really derive your answers following my previous discussion. Right. Let me see whether you can see the screen. Can you see my screen? Yes. You are able to see the screen, right? Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Shanaka. So all right. So basically, students, I'm sure this is a very important because there is a limited time. So what is more important, as I explained to you in my previous session, how do you build your confidence? And end of the day, it is a matter of writing answers because you have only 3 hours. During that 3 hours, how do you really, because this is a challenge in paper while you do all your calculations, application of accounting standards, I explained in the previous lecture, this is going to be this part of the syllabus, corporate governance, risk of material misstatement, ethics will really help you to push your marks beyond 50 and to even to be a prize winner. Now, more specifically, what I want to allocate this valuable, I don't take a lot of time. Maybe it is 1 hour lecture, but you need to really invest this 1 hour to understand how answers can be written, how open book can be used, and also to clarify any other questions when you navigate this syllabus. And now what should you do? Ask any questions and don't keep question at the end. I will sharp by about 8 after. Sometimes I'll stop once I cover these possible exam questions and then how do you answer those questions, right? So let us start with corporate governance. Right now, if you get this type of questions, evaluate the effectiveness of the board, right? Now, I want to also show you, let's look at the latest past paper available and how examiner actually tested that, right? So let me start from there and see in your paper how examiner will test corporate governance, if corporate governance is a potential topic, right? Now, this is how you can understand examiner's mind and probably way of testing by going through especially latest papers. And before I get into the suggested questions that I am discussing with you, look at this. Now, I hope you are seeing the latest paper, June 24, right? You got a similar pre-scene and then see the questions, right? This, I mean, you will get a very similar paper this time, no? So you got your acquisitions so for consolidation, possible acquisitions, so maybe disposal, right? And some accounting standards. Maybe you will get questions on evaluating their financial, stability, or because now they are in the process of restructuring the business. And in your chapter, study text, there is a dedicated chapter on the financial statement analysis, especially from a more analytical angle, right? So that this type of question also you may expect. And obviously, code of ethics is such a simple questions. You must answer that questions, right? You see, even in the last paper, these type of information was given. There is no audit committee, right? Lacks an audit committee, but there are good things that is mentioned in the case study. Board diligently consider the internal auditor's observation during these are good things. So a lot of good things were also mentioned in the last year paper. Now, what I want to see, how examiner tested, right? See, these 20 marks, wow, how easy to get this 20 marks. I am sure some of the students definitely, if you really study out of this 20, maybe 5 or 10, right? So some may have even ignored this type of a simple questions, right? Analyze the components. I have done many. If you look at, whenever I do uh, the sessions, this also has been a fundamental thing. And even in my previous lecture, I covered. See, this is application of course framework. How many components? All five components, 10 marks. But the question is how long you answer, what is exactly going to the answer, how quickly you can build it. Can you look at the open book? If that is the case, what is the book? What is the page number? Right? Or you are so confident you don't need any book. You know, this is control environment, the foundation. Control environment means the board and management systems that refers to the tone at the top. Triple A, management and board attitude. Triple A means attitude, awareness, and actions regarding the importance of control. In very simple word, you can say tone at the top. So the paper marking purpose, they won't exactly match one by one and eliminate your marks, but general description of this is what control environment. And these are the good or bad things. So then after control environment, you have the risk assessment. The risk need to be identified. Once the risk identified, the control should be brought in. Third one is a control activity. Then around all of that, there has to be a good information and communication system that feed to the board discussion, right? Then on the top of the course of framework, you have the whole monitoring mechanism, and that is about internal auditor's role. I explained to you in 2 minutes. Now that five, if you know practically without any books, right? You will quickly write, about 10 minutes, 10 marks, right? See how critical it is. And then second question was, I am coming to your paper. I have several suggested questions for you to practice, right? And to build that confidence. And some of the points how we write answer also we will discuss for your pre in December 24. But I want to explain to you examiner's mind and how questions were tested and how answers should be developed. And what is usually published as suggested solution is almost the marking scheme, the criteria, right? So then we will see how that, the points were brought in, take another 5 minutes. See this question, evaluate the compliance of the board, right? And its committees, including the impact from acquisition. Now, see, that's a very sharp point. When there is an acquisition, now, students who is going, some students without much studying or memorize කරලා වගේ ගිහිල්ලා answer කරද්දී, even this point they miss it. What happens? Imagine when there is acquisition, practical question. Can the parent company's audit committee take care of the subsidiary? Right? Or should you have committees for different companies? And then while your control environment is good, you can see that the company that is going to be acquired has a weak control environment, or they don't have internal audit. They have a higher risk in certain areas. So those are the implication of acquisition, right? And in this case, they only refer to the code of best practice. And I mentioned in my previous session as well, the listing rule has changed. There are many changes, and many companies in Sri Lanka, they have changed the committees and appointed new members, especially 9-year rules and then fit and proprietary criteria practically. Based on that, then ESG policies were brought in because that's, and a lot of other policies are required by listing rules. So those you need to be aware. So in this case, the examiner is expecting answer from the corporate governance code. Now, then when you write that answer, it's a broader one, right? Evaluate compliance of the board. Then there are many things. No, when you say committees, all the committees you can commit. So there is a new committee. Earlier it was nomination committee. Now we call governance and nomination committee from a listing rule perspective, right? So now, remuneration committee, all of that can be answered because this case study is silent about a remuneration committee. So what I want to emphasize, when you write your answer, you can write here the good things as well as bad thing, that evaluation, right? Now, this is how answer is structured, right? Now, if you look at especially the areas of see, this answer is has to be developed by you, right? So then typically you can actually, those who are who are totally relying on the book, you can what page number in auditing standard number 315, there is an annexure. That annexure clearly explain what this component. Let us say you don't want to spend that time, then you will simply write things like triple A, awareness, attitude, and action, and words like tone at the top to explain this is control environment. And then look at the bullet points given. I am just explaining to you the way you need to look at and apply this to current case study as well. not to expect the same question, but similar answer can be brought. Still, same points will come because anyway, whatever question you ask, the facts are the facts. What is asked under control environment can also be brought under corporate governance, right? In the board role. So what I am saying is, see, this question when it comes to control environment, it is the corporate governance aspect, right? Now, for example, directors do not allow any frauds. Now, this is a sentence extracted from the pre-scene, right? The pre-scene says this part, right? So that's where you pick and choose information and bring it nicely to structure your answer, right? Then company has policies and procedure means that is also given in the case study. Now, in your case study, they specifically talk about they have well-written SOPs and those SOPs are reviewed and changed. Now, those are the points you will bring under your case study. Then in your case study, audit committee can be a disaster because they only say there are independent members, but we know audit committee has failed. You can really bring those points and there is no internal audit. And your case study talks about ethics. Now, I am going to show this type of answer, especially for your question also. How do we apply? Then look at practically risk assessment is a big topic now. Why? Your syllabus was changed 2 years before to bring the CFO perspective. That CFO perspective means the risk perspective. Now, control environment means having a good board of directors and committees, right? The risk assessment is where you identify internal and external risk factors that can impact your financial statements. That is where the risk of material misstatement in terms of inherent or control will come. So there, by looking at the case study, you should be able to comment on current risk assessment. Now, see here, last time what examiner expected is all what is in the pre-scene. Because the pre-scene says they have ER in process, which is critical to identify risk, right? Then the board committees play in a vital role. And then this framework, right, helps to manage enterprise-wide risk. So this is enterprise risk management, and there is the defined risk appetite. You know, what is risk appetite? The risk board is willing to take. And internal audit also play a role in terms of checking control, including the fraud. And company does the scenario planning. See, most of these bullet points were taken from the pre-scene. And then to say, overall, this company has a risk assessment process. And you need to ask the question when it comes to acquisition, new company also, whether they have this process or not. Then if I ask you now, I am not looking any book. I am just asking you, what is your understanding about control activities practically? Now, there are exam make ready well in right now. I am asking you, use the chat and tell me if you are very confident. What is a control activity in relation to risk assessment, the connectivity? And then when you know like that, the producing answers nothing. You can bring very quickly the relevant points. See, anybody who can answer? I don't know the definition, but practically, well, how risk can, because the components are connected. In your case study, also the control activities, you can talk a lot. So any answers? Hmm? So see, the control activities are those, the procedures or directives to ensure once the risk is identified, let us say there is a risk to credit collection. I mean, there is a risk of impairment and there is a credit risk. Now, the control activities are those management directives to make sure that the credit risk are actually mitigated. Now, say credit risk is mitigated through the credit policy and monitoring. So the control activity will make sure that actually the credit reviews are done, the confirmations are called, or whatever securities are there to make sure credit risk is minimized. So that way, see the definition, those policies and procedures to ensure that management directives to mitigate the risk. So that is directly connected to the above. The risk mitigation directives are carried out. So that we have a practical understanding. Now I'm going back to what I wanted to show you. The way you should produce answers is to have a good knowledge about the subject matter, and then with that practical knowledge, bring bullets which are there from the pre-scene. And I have done that for you for selected questions. And during the next 45 minutes, I will go to different questions and enlighten you how the answers can be produced. And that also tells you, probably will tell that you have to really go back now to most critical areas, like I discussed with you in my first present discussion, cybersecurity risk management. What is the board oversight role? Now, this time they have asked, how do you talk? Then sustainability related information, what is the board oversight role? Then what is proportionality principle when it comes to mandatory adoption of sustainability standard? Very, very simple. The වචන දැකලා බය වෙන්නේ නැතුව proportionality means what is very simply proportionality means. Even a smaller company could adopt two things under proportionality principle. Now, can you tell me those two things? If not, you don't really understand that in a very simple, සරල විදිහට තේරිලා නැහැ, right? Proportionality principle in sustainability standard means what, right? That is to do the required disclosures based on what information? Available and supportable information without what? Undue cost and effort. Don't worry to do so many things. Do what you can do is one part of proportionality principle. The second part of proportionality principle is what? Whenever now there are IFRS sustainability requires complicated things like scenario planning and quantifying imagining Sri Lanka due to climate change. IFRS S2. Are you going to now the now in the newspaper it was mentioned millions of losses due to the crop the damage the climate change. Now, if you are a company, you have to estimate, quantify, this is my future loss. Because sustainability is not only present, it requires you to assess future. Now, that quantification you can't do. You are a small company, you don't have a financial model or that sophistication. You will write a paragraph. That paragraph is enough. So that paragraph is called qualitative disclosure. Very, very important point. Now you learn it. I'll show you the slide for that. This is the proportionality principle. I think I rushed this part in my previous session because I had to do it in 1 hour. Right now, see, I shifted to sustainability standard because this lecture is now to be very, very, valuable for you to really know certain things that matters. Proportionality principle means you read the two headers of this table, right? So proportionality principle, in if you look at as an idea, companies are idea of proportionality principle means there are big companies and small companies. Look at the Haley's report. They have done a lot of these, even Haley's. Now, being such a bigger company, they have done the scenario analysis, right? Which is very difficult one in a qualitative way. That means they have written a paragraph. Qualitative approach allowed because the quantitative approach requires, right, money, invest in certain softwares, models, and to have people who have the expertise. But the IFRS sustainability standard or SLFRS sustainability standard says you can use qualitative approach if company lacks skill, capability, or resources. ඉතින් මේ දෙක explain කරා නම් you will get a marks if there is a question on proportionality principle. So simple like that, right? So same way, the other concept that can be tested in learning outcome is transitional provision. Transitional provision simply means for difficult areas, they have given exemptions. For example, scope 3 reporting. I explained to you, scope 3 is not only your value chain, you have to look at how your emission of supply chain. You see, there are so many suppliers, how do you get that emission data, right? So then transitional relief allows you 2 years to do this, right? You do slowly this, like that both proportionality principle and transitional relief help the adoption, right? So this is transitional relief, for example. See this note standard in different areas, that's the relief, right? Entity shall initially disclose only scope 1 and 2. Full compliance with climate resilience disclosures, including scope 3, is required in 2 years. Now you understood one of the critical learning outcome, which is very simple. You must know when the standard is applicable from 2025, mandatory for top 100 companies, right? Is there any questions? Sir, can bring IFRS? Yeah, definitely IFRS S1 and S2, right? So I'm maybe my network strength maybe not that great, but let me show you. Those who haven't. Right, now can you see this? Right? So this book, have you got it? IFRS Sustainability Standard, right? So this is allowed as open book publication. All right, are you clear? So did you learn transitional relief and proportionality principle? So suddenly we went there because see, sustainability is very simply, you must know that, right? Then, if I go back to the ask any questions, as I told you last minute, don't ask questions, feel free to ask. Now we will go to corporate governance questions back. And how do you write answer? Because remember, the sustainability standards again, I hope you can see the screen now, is about governance. So there are four things in sustainability standard when it comes to disclosure. The main thing, because I'm still talking, I spoke about sustainability. Maybe we may not have time again to discuss, right? Therefore, let me to cover another aspect of sustainability and then come to the corporate governance answers. Now that is what is actually required by SLFRS S1 and S2 in very simple language. What is required? This slide is critical in understanding fundamentals. I hope you can see the screen. Can you see the slide on this one, 32? Are you able to see this slide? So the essence of the standard is to disclose what is called sustainability related financial information. Please note the word. That is why it comes under financial statement. Financial information is probably like I
Excuse
said,
me, sir, we got a slide. Sir, we
you
can't see
can't
the slide.
see. Ah, right. Sorry. Wait a
No,
minute.
sir, we can't see.
Sorry, maybe I'm not sharing now. Sorry. Are you able to see now? Can see, no?
Uh, Not yet. We'll see. I think.
I think now you should be able to see.
Now we can see,
Ah,
sir. Now
right.
we
There
can
you
see.
go. Yeah, thanks. Please talk if you don't see anything. This is a very short time. I'm trying to give you the maximum and ask question. See, the essence is to disclose what is called sustainability related financial information. See the word financial, right? So the one word to describe that is SRRO. What is SRRO? Sustainability related risk and opportunity. The mulu standard දෙකේම තියෙන most powerful word is SRRO. But remember, it has both risk and opportunities. Risk is negative, opportunity is positive. Give an example of positive thing. Now, many companies, if you look at Sri Lanka export companies, right? Even see, we are exporting to Europe, US. Now they are very concerned. Even Europe now they want calculation of emission per product. You have produced something from aluminum or whatever that has X amount of emission. So now they are going to tax, right? And then not only that, if especially if you look at Gen Z, they are really interested in products which are green and made ethically, and there is a green premium. Now you can talk about these positive things. You are developing a new product. You have spent X amount and you expect X amount of revenue. And that is opportunity information that can go to your annual report. It will really boost your, the investor's perspective about the company. The risk is what I explained to you. The best example to give ඔයාලට දැනෙන විදිහට අර පත්තරේ තිබුණේ කොච්චරක් loss එකක් තිබුණාද කියලා ඒ වගේ companyයක් if you take in future for the next 3 years, because remember climate change risk is not some you have to define as per S1 and S2 the time horizon. Usually there are two risks I explained to you in the previous slide. Look at this now. What are the two risks? Transition risk, right? And physical risk. Now you can see this right side diagram, transition risk. Now I told you when you sell to Europe, you will be taxed for the carbon emission, right? So that is coming from policy and legal risks. That's a good example, right? Then the fact that we produce green products and sell, there is an opportunity. There can be opportunity. You see, markets are there for product in the opportunity side. Then the two risks, one is a transition risk. That means when you transition to a low carbon economy, there are risks you have to report. The most practical, understandable risk is physical risk. Physical risk means suddenly there is a climate, what is a physical risk? Extreme weather events. Now, if you look at now Bangladesh, the people can't work. It's so hot. So then what will happen? Imagine if a factory is closed one day, what is the loss? You have to calculate. Not only now, how it will evolve in future. Now the flooding, right? Now things like flood, you know how it was affected in Sri Lanka. Now the idea, there are two type of physical risk. One is acute risk, right? Acute means suddenly it comes and hit you, right? Now, like maybe the case we had, something going to India came and hit us in Sri Lanka, right? Then it went back there. That is short term. Chronic means the long term change in weather pattern. The way it goes, I told you about a couple of months ago, the Spain, the 1 year rain in one day. See, it was a disaster. And you have to quantify this financial effect, right? Not only current financially, but future. So that quantification is very difficult. That's why you can qualitatively describe under proportionality principle. So the essence of IFRS is 1 and S2 is to describe what is called SRRO, right? And S2 standard. Right now, another question I asked you in my previous discussion, please write down, right? What is climate first approach? Please write. What is climate first approach? Now only S2 standard is there. There is no S3, S4, 5 will come. They are in the process of doing that, right? What matters as a major risk for SRRO right now is climate risk because we don't have a planet to live, no? So that's why we have to first focus on the climate risk emission and then risk and opportunities. Therefore, the climate first approach, you can have many SRROs. What are the example? Now, if you take water not available is a SRRO, right? Water not, there is no water. Oh, there is a labor concern, and then there is a huge reputational risk that also may impact you can't produce. Now, don't worry about any of those labor or water or whatever, but actually, water also relates to climate. But the first year, you have to report only climate. I mean, now you have climate first approach means out of this RRO report only climate risks. What are the risks? Transition risks, physical risks. They are the most difficult calculation is what? Scope 1, 2, and 3 emission as per what standard? Greenhouse gas protocol, corporate accounting standard. If you want to understand this further, I have done 2 hour lecture that is freely available. You can watch that. So then by doing that, I can reduce now the time, that whole thing. And this is, remember, in the market, highly marketable knowledge, very practical because now the board of directors are responsible. Those companies who don't have the knowledge, and remember, under proportionality principle, they don't have the skill and competence, even because the standard asks tough question from the board, right? Before I go there, what is the essence of the standard? You have to disclose SRRO and four things, right? Four things. But before I go to four things, what what is a test to do whether something is SRRO or not? Test. There are three tests, right? If it is SRRO, it should affect your cash flow. Remember, this is a financial statements. Now, water not available, right? Or you expect a climate disruption, your money, your cash flow is affected. Or that you are in a disaster, you are making losses, you can't access to finance, right? Or it is going to affect your cost of capital. One of these tests actually has to be affected or has to be met if something is SRR. මේ තුනටම එක වචනයක් කිව්වොත් please write financial prospects. Any SRRO that is going to affect the financial prospects are called SRRO. Then regarding SRRO, four things are important and you must also disclose those four. That's where this topic connects to corporate governance. It begins with governance. So that is this slide. The board of directors should know five things, five house. ඉස්සලාම board එක දැනගන්න ඕනේ which committee. Now see which committee is going to take over sustainability. How responsibilities are reflected in the terms of reference. Is it audit committee or risk committee or ESG committee? Right? Then whether board has the skill and competence to understand this. If not, how are they going to understand? How the body means the board. Third, how frequently at the board meeting are you discussing the emission of your supply chain or any other SRR or flood or what is going to happen? Are you discussing or are you only looking numbers? Right now, you see in your case study, what is the SRRO that your board should have discussed? And actually, most of the losses partly from SRRO. You see, how the industry for your case study is what? The logistic, right? Now, Red Sea issue is a huge geopolitical issue, right? How Red Sea was disrupted is more than it's maybe a man-made risk, but again, a kind of SRRO. Why? Because SRRO is outside in how external factors impact in your financials, right? It is kind of a thing. Then whether board actually anticipated the loss due to this disruption. Risk mitigation means what? Now, one of the thing in your case study, I'm going to show you answers that I have suggested some questions and how do you structure answers during the last half an hour. I will go there in 5 minutes. But my point to you, when it comes to sustainability standard, the governing board, right? How is which committee? Second one is, do they have the knowledge, skill and competence? These are the two words. Then whether the information coming to board discussion, right? And then how they consider this as a part of their strategy and decision making. Now, in your case study, to what level they have considered this type of risk. And finally, targets. Now, see, please write one of the famous target is net zero target. When are you going to be net zero? Most Sri Lankan companies who are responsible now, they say by 2050. Our country also has a target, right? Companies can say 2040, we are going to be net zero. How do you measure your net zero? That's where the emission accounting comes, right? So it's very, very important to ensure this is correctly done. And when you consolidate, remember, consolidation, you have to consolidate your emission inventory. Please write the word emission inventory. So that greenhouse gas accounting standard you use and consolidate. There are two methods. I don't go to a lot of detail, but those you will learn on a new syllabus. I'm sure, but don't wait for new syllabus. Now also in the market, if you are using this, see, when you consolidate, you have the equity approach and control approach. Now you have a subsidiary. If you use equity approach, you will only take your percentage of emission. If you use control approach, you will like consolidate, you will do. So those are the points. So that's enough for standard. Now, what did you learn during last 10 minutes? You learned one big thing. The essence of IFRS S1 and S2 is to report sustainability related risk and opportunities. And four things. What is sustainability related risk and opportunities? The test case is going to affect one of these three. And then in addition, you have to disclose four things: governance, strategy, risk management. And then in that governance means those five hows, in that the what committee, whether the board have the skill, and how frequently they are discussing, and whether they are considering the impact on the connectivity to the strategy and risk management, and finally, what are the targets they have set. So that is, quick discussion. Now, if I go back to my the answers that we are looking, I hope you can see the Word document now, right? Are you able to see? Yes, thank you. So I will also look at your question. I will suddenly close the session. වැඩිපුර ප්‍රශ්න අහන තරමට you will learn now. Sir, will you do a exam online? I will do exam online. Can I bring printed pre-seen copy to pre-seen, and can I highlight more? I suppose I will actually answer this question now itself. Let's see. I'll answer that question. I think maybe usually yes. Wait, let me check with CA and get back. And if any students who has done this, please write answer by yourself. Any students who has previously done, they will allow. Could you share the PPT? Yes, I have to, because I was waiting for today's session, and then after that I will share. So any questions, please tell me. Now we are going to most critical part, writing answers, right? Okay. අමාරුම වැඩේ සහ වැදගත්ම වැඩේ. Now, how do you write this answer? දැන් ඔයාලා කියන්න බලන්න මේක ලියන්නේ කොහොමද? Within 10 minutes, how can you produce some 5 bullet points? And don't do the mistake of writing unnecessary things. Short and sweet. Bullets, right? And that is how, if you want to be the prize winner, right? Make sure you answer entire paper, not wasting time, and don't write what is more than required. So if it is required 5 marks, maybe half a page. Even you will measure the size. So that level, you have to be very strategic. Now, if I give you 5 marks, maybe 3, 4 bullet points, done. Evaluate the effectiveness of the board in terms of discharging primary board responsibility. How do I answer this type of question? Prime board responsibility. 4.3.1. Look at your corporate governance code now. Take the book now. this type of answer, you can, your first preference more than the study text for some of the direct corporate governance is the governance code. Now, I am sure if this question asks, you are not writing some of the below information, which I am showing to you now. First thing in your case study, are you happy? The information board is looking. Is it only financial information? Are they discussing the risk indicators, ESG indicators? If so, the information comes on a monthly or quarterly. What is the recommended one? Now that part, I am sure most of you may not comment. Now this is the answer from the book again, but I have adjusted to the case study, right? One is how regularly board meetings are done, that most of you know it is a quarterly thing. But do you know the structure and regularity? Structure means මොන විදිහටද තොරතුරු එන්නේ. Regularity means how frequently information come into the board. What is recommended is monthly. Monthly information is it coming to the board. About what? In your case study, I am highlighting whether the risk information came to the board or not. Impact on the risk factors, financial and operational result and risk mitigation. I am sure this is lacking in your case study. I am taking this from the book, but I am relating to the case study. And then compliance with laws and regulation probably not adequate. Internal control breaches in your case study says, see, case study, notable cases of deficiencies were found, most of which were resulted in fundamental control. Now I am writing this in my word, right? Most of this resulted from fundamental control issues like what? Now this is borrowed from the case study, these two words, segregation of duties and conflict of interest. That's how a brilliant student will write answers, right? And then ESG related consideration, we can generally write because the case study is not very. Cyber issue is a big thing, no? Whether cyber risk ideally should be considered. Now that is one bullet point that I will write. Now this A1. See, I have given in corporate governance code. This is A1.1. What is the answer? Because this is called primary board, main board responsibility. Then the other main area, in addition to the effectiveness in terms of meeting and information, remember two things, meeting and information is to really see whether board is doing what they are supposed to do in terms of strategy. The main role is entrepreneurial leadership. As leaders, are they operating within a framework of the risk and control? Again, the keyword is risk and control, right? So there are what matters. Are you happy with the business strategy of this company? You can come in. But one of the things you are not happy probably is chairman. Because in this company, chairman is not independent. And very important point is to ask why there is no SID, right? Very important, because this is also to ensure board is discharging their responsibility. Chairman role is critical. Then is there an effective system on information integrity and cyber? This is again very specifically given on A1.2 in the corporate governance code. Not that I am just putting it. And then these similar topics, right? Then how do you comment based on the case study? You have to again adjust like I have written here this answer. Then the third point, about the board, if you are talking about the board, no, this I'm asking as additional question. Now, these points are enough probably, for this question, primary board. But if I want to give you additional point, for example, succession planning, whether senior management is competent, those are additional point which will come under prime board responsibility. Look at those principles. Then if I ask you another question, what do you think about the board balance? This is very important, examinable. The main problem is the chairman is not independent, and this may affect the balance of power. In such a cases, majority of the board should be non-executive. Now there you can make a recommendation. Next obvious point in this case study is 9-year rule. Because the most independent directors have joined in 2008. And remember, your current corporate governance code has specific paragraph. Because usually company can justify if a director is, if one of these independent, I am also be aware about this criteria for independence. Huh? Now this set of criteria I am taking from listing rule. Because you have to know listing rule as well. The difference in listing rule when it comes to independence criteria is this. Even 70 years, the age of directors are not given. No? If a director is not, I mean, above 70, even the independence criteria is not met. right? According to listing rule, now 9-year rule. Now, according to listing rule, 9-year means you can't. But in corporate governance code, there is a paragraph to say if a director has, 10 years, company may justify, right? So that, but the justification is only available in case of 9-year. That's a specific paragraph. So I'm sure 9-year thing something you can definitely talk about in the exam, right? So what is the answer now? What answer is simple like this. No independent directors appointed in 2008, which exceed 9-year limits. It will be difficult to make a justification. Maybe difficult. Like you can't just justify. No? Therefore, our recommendation is to appoint new directors. Further, it's very important to appoint SID because to address the dominance of the founder chair. Right. So this is how you practically develop answer. Let me show you another question. Evaluate how the board has balanced performance and conform. Again, this is a low in the exam, 4.3.2, right? Because in my previous session, I emphasized you examiner will go by LO. We'll decide if this LO comes, you have to answer that type of a question. Now, when you talk about performance and conformance, you have to talk four things. Those four I tried to explain in my previous lecture, I mean, in a hurry, rush. The four things board of directors are do, you can bucket into two. One is performance. Remember, performance relates primarily to the future because the performance begins by looking at the strategy, right? Looking externally, looking ahead, how the company is going to strategize to make money. So in that, two things are important: strategy formulation, right? Page number 820 in the study text. See, when you read, you must know the most critical page that connects to the LO. So this diagram also given. Strategy form. This is not in the corporate governance code, by the way, right? Because this is the knowledge of advanced, real corporate governance. So you look at the strategy formulation. Are they okay in terms of the right strategy? Is it sustainable? The logistic business, should they diversify into different businesses and so on? Then the policies that they need to have to operate within this framework. This is more of a future focus. So this මේ දෙකට තමයි කියන්නේ performance. The conformance is to make sure that you operate within this policy framework or SOP and how board of directors are monitoring the management and supervising the management. If you look at that is today's role as well as past and present focus, daily basis, monthly basis, internally looking, and then outward looking is actually how the information goes to the stakeholders. In your case study, this is a big problem because the stakeholders are unhappy because of the inaccuracies in the financial statements. The ESG reporting, sustainability reporting, financial statements connect to this role. So that is called what? Conformance role, right? So when it comes to the four main responsibilities, see if I want to write, I may write, it appears that the board has to great extent failed to execute, right? Although the performance would have been impacted by external factors, the board still, they have to have a proper process of identifying and mitigating risks, right? And then further significant control deficiency like that, you can, I mean, same information or එකම තොරතුර අවශ්‍ය විදිහට you put into the question that comes in. But you need to really understand and pitch it based on the knowledge component behind the LO. This is the knowledge component behind the LO. දැන් මම මේකේ හැම වචනෙම meaning එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් මේක තමයි knowledge component කියන්නේ, right? Without this, you cannot approach that question. You can approach, but it's not logical, right? Then evaluate the functions of the board committee. Now, this is another area. So there are several, please note this company, look at overall corporate governance, right? What are they doing as audit committee members? Now, can you tell me what is the main issue with the audit committee? Please use the chat and tell, we have limited time to close this lecture. What are the main issues with audit committee? What is the top issue with the audit committee? Because I have another question on audit committee, I guess. Yeah, effectiveness of the audit committee. Please use the chat. Any students? Okay, let me see. What is the issue with audit committee? You can talk also. Huh? So you are taking time then. If I give you time, every minute has a lot of value. Hmm? No issue with audit committee. Hmm? Now, according to corporate governance code, who should be the chairman of audit committee? What are the qualification chairman should have? So I hope you all are there or not there. Hmm? Right. Remember, yeah, one student writing. Yeah. Remember, biggest one. Yeah, that is you apply 9-year-old PUMI. Yeah, you are correct. But what is the fundamental issue? I am asking you, audit committee chairman should be a member of a professional accountancy body. Is there anybody like that? Nobody, right? Why? All the people have what degrees? Logistic marketing people, no, except the finance director. He can't be audit committee chair, no. Then, members of the audit committee. Now, see, this is very, very powerful. Look at this answer for the audit committee. Where basically, you have to say audit committee chairman is not a member of the professional accounting body. Let me quickly run through this. That is one. Secondly, the audit committee member should have recent and relevant financial literacy. So those two are out. I mean, unless the unseen says there is another audit committee, because now the board members are given in the case study. No, that's the most biggest point you must note from the case study, right? So when it comes to the function of the board, in terms of integrity of financial, that's another yellow. Huh? Integrity means your numbers, no? So there, inaccurate financial reporting clearly indicate a weakness in the board oversight role, right? And second point is a very big point. මේ වගේ points already directly noticed when in Apple, right? The second issue is now why there are issues like that. There is a question about competence. This is also part of control environment, right? Management competence. I don't know. Now they say the FD is qualified and maybe accountant is part qualified, but how can you have such inaccuracy? Then if they are competent, still there is issue. It is an ethical issue. So remember, it's so easy to answer ethics question. You have to only apply SFI. You have to really know. Now I'm coming to ethics. SFI. What is SFI? Yeah, මේක දන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ ethics දන්නේ, right? Huh? Is there a self-review? Is there advocacy? Right? And then self-interest, familiarity, and intimidation means somebody is putting pressure to manipulate. Now imagine if chairman is putting pressure to manipulate, that intimidation threat is going to affect your objectivity as well as your integrity, right? As a result, while you know the standards, you will not apply the standards properly. That's how you write that one sentence, which is very, very powerful, right? So we can say the pressure by the chairman create intimidation threat, which affects the accountant's objectivity, right? And integrity. Integrity is not met means knowingly you are misapplying accounting standards, right? So that's how you will write that answer. Okay. So now you see how he connects to ethics, because there is a question no, if the competence and ethics is a big point. And මේ point I am sure unless you are a brilliant student, you miss this. ඒක අර obvious නැහැනේ, less obvious. Then the case study is silent about the role of internal auditor, right? And if there is no internal audit function, it is highly recommended, given the high risk profile and complexity of the organization. Role of the audit committee is questionable as review of financial. Now, basic thing they have failed. No, SLFRS, fundamental duty, they have failed. This also brings into question the competence and independence members of the audit committee. Remember, further information is required, especially chairman should be a member of, it's a new thing in the new code of ethics. Earlier, it did not mention. That is why most Sri Lankan companies changed audit committee members. One, either they are older or they are not qualified. There are some, are not most. There are some, right? A qualified member of a professional accounting body, the chairman role. Then evaluate the effectiveness of audit committee. In this case study, if you want recommendation, right, you have to review the audit committee charter to figure out what are they actually doing. This is the point. Independent chair who is a member of a professional accounting body, right? And then the board should satisfy that they have relevant and recent experience in financial reporting and controls, whether they have experience. Another practical aspect that I'm telling you, it should be deliberated with the risk management is discussed in your case study. Even ESG should be a part of audit committee or risk committee. Now, if you look at the listing rule specifically, right? They say if you have two committees, look at risk committee, audit committee. Now, listing rules specifically talk about risk management. Look at the points in red here. Things like this. Now, who review the risk policies of the company? Who oversee the process to ensure risk management works? This is from listing rule. Huh? So you can see the rule number. And this is also in the corporate governance code risk management. Who review and ensure that the risk management and business continuity plans are there, right? Then a corrective action plan if these mitigations are not working. Now, if you are a listed company, you can have two committees, audit or risk committee. If it is only audit committee, you have to ensure the audit committee covers this. If not, risk committee has to cover this, right? And other thing is specifically in the listing rule, they talk about audit committee role to review quarterly. Please write this, huh? Quarterly financial statement before it is presented to the board. The audit committee has to review. I'm sure in this company they wouldn't have done that properly, right? Then another question 4.4.2, evaluate the role of audit committee in strengthening the control. Now, what is the relationship between audit committee and control environment? This is also a learning outcome. මට හිතෙන ප්‍රශ්න නෙමෙයි මේ දාන්නේ. So anything that comes in, how do you change your questions to suit the answer? Now you see the definition of control environment. I told you triple A, right? What is triple A? Attitude, awareness, and action. Another big word is to use tone at the top. So it refers to governance and management functions. So control environment means five things, right? What are those five? Starts with responsibilities to ensure that one area of corporate governance, control environment is, for me, it's one word, integrity and ethics. Local paragraph, but we can break it to one word, integrity and ethics. Your company has a code of ethics, but we don't know whether it is working. Whether audit committee has a how audit committee is going to ensure integrity and ethics program works. That is how audit committee can interfere. For example, is there a whistleblowing mechanism? Now, see, those are the powerful answers you can build it, right? When those start with governance separate from management, second point, under control environment. What I'm talking to you now is a control environment, five things under control environment. One is this, second one is how board of directors are going to be independent from management. That is where independent directors comes. And can they exercise role on the oversight? Now, in this your case study, this is also failed because there are no independent members. And how the overall assignment of authority and responsibility to pursue the objective. Now, in your company, there's a problem. No, that I told you in my previous lecture, there's an aggressive target-driven culture, and that might create incentive pressure. So, the audit committee is considering the fraud risk assessment, FRA. Fraud risk assessment means three things: incentive or pressure. I told this in mentioned this in the last class, opportunity rationalization. Please go through. There's a separate chapter in your study text called fraud. In that, the fraud triangle, fraud risk assessment, and fraud prevention. Those questions may come in the exam, right? May come. Then the other part of control environment is now whether audit committee involved in this fraud part, and I am again giving you a not obvious answer, less obvious answers. Then talent role overall, for example, again, if the accounting department people are not qualified or competent, the audit committee should recommend to replace them, no? Right? If there are ethical issues, audit committee should look at unethical practices are there under point one. It will affect point here as well. And how actions are taken for those responsible parties. If actions are not taken, that is a big problem, no? This is how audit committee can actually interfere. Audit committee can direct the main board to sack anybody who involved in a fraud, right? So having, and now I'm linking my answer, having an independent audit committee is a positive indicator of sound control environment. Audit committee can foster ethical culture by ensuring ethical programs are implemented. Example, whistleblower, right? Make the board and management accountable if there are take action and so on. So now that powerful 1 hour is over, right? What questions you want to ask? That's all I want to discuss. Sharp. Any other questions before I wrap up? Will it possible course of framework in the exam? I told you, I started this lecture with the last exam papers. Examiner simply asks, apply course of framework 10 marks, right? And then, yeah, I will give that feedback to CA. And last presentation you didn't get, my one also I'll share with you. So what is important, students, course or control, whatever it is, remember LO based exam preparation if you want to pass the exam, right? That is very, very important. So whether COSO, whatever comes, yeah, COSO can come. I showed you our last paper, it has come, but this time, Aruna, අරුණ පොඩි question එකක් අර overseas students ලාට pre-scene එකක් අරන් යන්න පුළුවන්ද මේ copy එක hard copy පුළුවන් නේ ඒක highlight කරන්න පුළුවන්ද ඕන පුළුවන් එහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ නේ නේද right okay right thanks. So your questions, you can take the pre-scene copy to the exam overseas students, right? So yeah, so please ask any questions. I have another 3 minutes. And I am sure this morning session was benefited and improved more than anything else, how to confidently build your answer. Confidence is number one to pass the exam. And let's see what any other question I can take. Don't we need to discuss IFRS S1 and S2? I discussed actually, right? In this lecture. See, what else you need to know regarding IFRS? I told you, please watch because now if I were to cover, I can do another 2 hours. But what I covered is to a great extent adequate, especially. But having said that, please go through the other learning outcome. And there is a lecture I have done, which is freely available, 2 hours. IFRS S1 and S2, you can watch that. And any other question, please reach out. You can even write to, don't worry about where you study, irrelevant. If you have any support required, you reach out to CA because this is from CA, this session, and drop a note and even you can write to me if you have a question and I will definitely support you. So let's see what other questions you have. So LO base means what? I join now. That's very, very much. Students now the LO base learning මොකක්ද කියලා අහනවනේ. දැන් ඔයාලට දවස් see if I have only 3 days to prepare for the exam, I have done it. No, when I was doing chartered, sometimes we are working, we have only 5 days. How do you still want to, pass the exam? Start with LOs. Right? LO කියන්නේ examiner question එකක් හදන්න ඕනේ ඒක ඇතුලේ. Right? Learning outcome එක මම මේ ඔක්කොම දාලා තියෙන LOs. මම අහපු හැම ප්‍රශ්නයක්ම you see there is a LO. LO කියන්නේ උදාහරණයක් හැටියට see this point. Evaluate how LO learning outcome 4.3.2. Now your study pack has 1,000 pages. Should you read all 1,000 pages? No. What paragraph are important? I'll give you example. Board functions, if they ask a question, you must read page number 820. That page is a critical page in study text. Control environment. Those who can't remember or lazy, you must put a tag in the auditing standard that has control environment. Or the course of I components is open book. All open. No, that is why I told you this is the most easiest one. And remember, today I took 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes to explain to you how to write ethics answer. Look at any past papers. The question in ethics is very similar. They are only asking how fundamental ethical principles are violated based on SAS-FI. SAS-FI means self-interest, intimidation, right? Self-review and familiarity and intimidation. The මේටිකට කියන්නේ threats. Then you must know fundamental principle. A principle or practical understanding you need to have integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, right? And professional behavior. This has to be practiced. Another area that can be tested is NOCLA, non-compliance with laws and regulation. If you are an accountant, if you see that your company is violating a law, NOCLA, right, gives you the confidence to directly raise that matter with your boss. If boss is not listening, go to the next, right? And if the matter is like money laundering, it allows you to even go to the central bank and you are protected. That's NOCLA in 1 minute. this is what is examinable most probably, while your syllabus has so many topics, examine is very reasonable when it comes to exam, because examiner knows if a difficult questions are put in, pass rate can further go down, right? Any other questions? So even in my lecture, the GRI, yes, GRI is like this. Examiner wants to know now in Sri Lanka, now see from next year, IFRS is compulsory for top 100 companies, right? 25. The GRI, remember, is based on the impact materiality. Please write. Impact materiality means how company is going to impact the external world. When I say external world, how companies impacting the people and the planet, let's say, impact materiality. Whereas IFRS goes on the financial materiality, how external world, the flood is going to affect, or the say tsunami or a flood or an external thing is affecting my cash flow. That is financial materiality, right? So the understanding, those companies who are using GRI, they are currently assessing the impact materiality, but what is lacking is to identify those sustainability related risk and opportunities that is going to affect the financial prospects, meaning three things. One of the three: cash flow, cost of capital, access to finance, right? So GRI helps us to identify. GRI is stakeholder based standard, whereas IFRS is an investor based standard. That's what you need to know. And practically, your understanding is, although companies using GRI, it will help, but they have to still do some work to properly identify SRRO, because the GRI is not specifically designed for investors. It is designed for stakeholders, right? I hope I answer your question. In case questions given, mini case related to question, we need to refer to pre-seen. No, can we write the answer referring to mini case without refer point? Students, it's very clear if like I showed you the last past paper, right? Pre-seen base one, examiner will not give you additional information. Sometimes directly asking a question totally from pre-seen. If it is a mini case, you don't need to refer to pre-seen, right? There is basically, what do you mean by mini case? If it is a pre-seen, examiner will just add one paragraph or two paragraph. In corporate governance, there very maybe one sentence or two sentence. It's not a mini case. It is unseen information. Now, mini case, maybe you don't get corporate governance from pre-seen. You have a separate new question that is there. If you go 1 year before, there is a past paper question. Examiner is writing one paragraph and asking to comment on the board of directors. That is a mini case, right? Then, so are there independent non-executive directors in ELP whose tenure exceed 9 years more than? That's why I told I don't know, you are joined from the beginning student. Now we discussed there are no independent. If 9 year rule is not met, right? And I explained to you in listing rule, 9 year rule is a must. But whereas in CA code it says company may justify, but practically our recommendation is to change the directors and to appoint a SID. So that we discuss. Any other questions before we stop? Right. So I hope what we discuss in this 1 hour is valuable to you, especially how an answer can be developed, right? Not by taking what is obvious, copy paste approach, in a way, how to really interpret and bring out points that matters. So with that, I conclude my lecture. Wish you all the best. All of you can remember my message, right? Thanks for your comment. Remember my message that you can be the prize winner in this paper. And if you are prize winner, don't settle to get 50 marks. The chance you will get less than 50 is very high. Target 70, you will definitely get 50. That's why I said be the prize winner. Then obviously there is no question about your pass rate. And actually you will be ended up being a prize winner. Thank you so much. And again, I wish you all the best. And if there are any further questions, reach out to CA in relation to this session or reach out to me and we'll help you. Thank you. Thanks for your comment. And I'm really happy to see that you were benefited. That's why in this morning I wanted to allocate because I was not happy. I felt that I could not properly do in the last one. Now it was a rush, and then that's why I got this time. I was not happy because certain areas are not covered. I want to do it again, right? Not again, to do a additional part. Video recorded, yes, yes. This is CA, right? They will actually record this and make it available to students and inform your friends if you feel this lecture is important to watch it, especially writing, because finally කොච්චර lectures ඇහුවත් මොනවා කරත් වැඩක් නැහැ. And if you can't write, you will really get stuck. No, remember my advice before going for the exam, sit and write at least 3 papers, sit 3 hours, lock your room, right? Don't take anything. Have all the books on your table. Write the entire answer. Mark your answer against the suggested answers. Give you marks. If you feel you are above 50, definitely in the exam also. Let's say your answers are terrible. Go back to specific areas in the yellow. Yellow එකට පිටිපස්සෙන් තියෙන knowledge component. Now this is a knowledge component, right? Now what you see on the screen is a knowledge component, right? If you don't know this, you can't answer question on board functions. So that is where you need to really target knowledge component, right? So with that, students, we will conclude this session. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best and would like to see you as chartered accountants, right? In very soon. Thanks.